Hi Founder fans, Jason here, and today we're going to be talking about the wealthiest man in Philadelphia during the American Revolution. And his name is William Bingham. Now, before we get started, I have to give a big thank you to Mama Mandrush for a present we had to celebrate a little early this year because of family and time constraints, but she just gave me this to hang up in this studio that I'm building, and it is it's an American flag, but if you notice, there's a G clef and some music notes. And it actually is the beginning of the Star Spangled Banner. Oh, say, can you see? But it all depends. There's more than you usually get on a staff, so you have to pay attention to where the G clef is pointing to know where the notes go. In addition to history, I like to play music, and my mom knows that. And I am really proud of that and really, really grateful, so I had to share it with you. But let's get to William Bingham. So, William Bingham was already a very wealthy merchant in Philadelphia when the Revolution began. And the Committee of Secret Correspondence, which was kind of like a CIA, they're the ones who... It was really headed by Benjamin Franklin, and they were the first ones trying to negotiate with other countries. And they sent Silas Deane, who was on the committee, went to France to try and recruit their help. And in order to communicate better with Deane in France, they sent William Bingham to Martinique in the Caribbean, because it would be easier to communicate information to him and then have him send it from there instead of just trying to go straight across the ocean, because the British were on the lookout for that. So Deane spent about a year over there with this communication. Then he returned back to the United States. He brought with him supplies and ammunition that the army desperately needed to get them through until France finally sided with the United States and supported them. And then Bingham kind of played a backseat role. Again, he was super wealthy, and he wanted to he did want to make sure he knew which side won, but he was secretly helping the revolutionaries the whole time. Once the war ends, he starts investing heavily. He makes a lot of money because he invests in privateers, which were privately owned ships that basically acted as pirates, except they were hired by the Americans, so it was A-okay, and they would attack the British, but the owner of the ships would get a huge cut of whatever was taken, and this is how Bingham really became probably the wealthiest man for at least 5 years or so. Not the whole revolution, but 5 years or so he was the wealthiest man, and always one of the wealthiest people in Pennsylvania. So, with this wealth, he starts investing in his countries, well, mostly in Pennsylvania. He invested in some textile mills, he invested in a bunch of land. He becomes a member, he helps Alexander Hamilton start the first Bank of the United States, which was, in a way, the first national bank. He served as a Continental Congressman for 2 years in the late 1780s, and he was a captain of cavalry, dragoons. They didn't really fight any wars. It was between wars. They were dressed very elegantly, and that is one of the reasons when Washington was going from Virginia to New York City to take his seat as President of the United States, Bingham was the one who brought his men to escort Washington from Philadelphia to New York. They were very well dressed, so it helped make a big show of it. So Bingham, right about the time the Constitution was signed, Pennsylvania wrote a new constitution, a state constitution. They had tried something very experimental with one legislature and no executive, and it didn't work out very well, so they rewrote things. And as soon as that was done, Bingham became the first Speaker of the Pennsylvania House. And he was in the Pennsylvania House, and by 1795 he was actually sent to the United States Senate, and he spent 6 years as a United States Senator, during which time he became President pro tempore, which is more or less number 2 in the House after the Vice President, in the Senate after the Vice President. And during this time, when Thomas Jefferson became Vice President, he administered the oath of office to Vice President Jefferson. Now, he also played a very big role in creating the U.S. Treasury Department. especially when the government moved from New York to Philadelphia for several years before Washington, D.C. was ready. And Binghamton had many holdings, but he was a Federalist, and his house became a gathering place for the Federalist Party, for them to get organized as a party before they went in and made motions and votes and things like that. And from there, he had aged and would retire. Now, he played kind of a small role or a background role in the founding, but it was very important because he helped put together the economy that we still have today. He was a very important person in helping with that, even if he didn't have the titles necessarily to coincide with it. As far as today, Bingham is not super well known, but there is a city in New York called Binghamton, and Binghamton University is a fairly good school. It's not an Ivy League school by any means, but it is one of the best schools in New York State. And William Bingham, well, he never lived there, but he owned that land, and one of his agents who helped build New York, he had land in Maine and Pennsylvania and New York and all over the place. But one of his agents who helped to make what was then the New York frontier into what is now upstate New York named a city after Bingham. So his lasting legacy is Binghamton and Binghamton University. So if it sounded familiar when you heard the name, that's probably why. We're going to keep it short today. Tomorrow's Christmas Eve. I am going to put out a video. I expect to do someone relevant to Christmas Eve. Have a guess in the comments. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Thank you.